Now we have reached to the module 2, that is your security baselines and vulnerability response. Now what is a security baseline and why it matters? Many vulnerabilities stem from poor system configuration rather than just unpatched software. Misconfigured systems can create open doors for attackers. Let's say we are using default passwords. We are not implementing particular set of firewall rules. We are not having principle of least privileges. So these are the vulnerabilities that are going to make more issues. So what we can do as a part of our key practices? We should be establishing a baselines. We need to define a standard secure configuration for each operating systems. For example, let's say disable the guest accounts, enforce strong passwords, etc. There is something called as CIS benchmark. So if you go ahead and check CIS benchmarks, Center for Internet Security gives you certain level of benchmarking terms. Okay, so you have the CID hardened images, you can directly get it up, or you have the benchmark itself that you can leverage. So you have controls, you have benchmarks, and different the things. You go ahead and check for what technology you are using and what benchmark you want to create as a part of our setting. For example, let's say I'm using something called as Microsoft Windows or Action Server. Maybe let's take Windows Desktop. You download the benchmark for Windows 10, Windows 11, different things. So this provides a basic security check in place for your day-to-day operating systems and the technology one uses. So one needs to use CIS benchmarks, or we have another called as DSASTICs to compare and harden the systems, which would help you to identify the deviations from the secure baseline. Second, you should be having continuous monitoring. You need to implement the tools to constantly monitor system configuration, and if there is any deviation found from the baseline, it should trigger an alert for the prompt investigation and remediation. Something like SIEM, file integrity manager, all these types of things we need to have it. Even the configuration management tools like Chef, Puppet, and Ansible can be dedicated directly to the SIEM system for continuous monitoring. So then we have something called as vulnerability disclosure and coordination. Why it matters? We need to understand how vulnerabilities are disclosed and helps the analyst to track high priority threats and prepare for potential exploitation. So we have something called as CVD process, that is the coordinated vulnerability disclosure. This is a process where researchers privately report vulnerabilities to vendors, giving them time to develop a patch before public disclosure. So we are doing a private bug hunting sort of thing, and we are doing the vulnerability disclosure to the vendor. So I'm reporting to Microsoft that, hey, I found a vulnerability into your web portal, and I'm giving at least, let's say, 4 weeks of time to release a patch before I can release a video or a blog publicly. There are certain types of vendors, computer emergency response teams. They act as the central points of contact. Then we have information sharing and analysis centers that facilitate industry specific threat sharing, and vendors are responsible for developing the patches. So this is also one type of coordination available. And you have the responsible disclosure, ethics and timelines. A ethical practice of giving vendors a reasonable time frame, for example, let's say 30 to 90 days, to fix a vulnerability before it is made public, preventing zero-day attacks. Now there is a new term that is called a zero-day. Let's understand what is a zero-day attacks or vulnerability. So a zero-day is a vulnerability that is unknown to the vendor and has no available patch, making it particularly dangerous as attackers can exploit it before defenders can react. Now, how to defend against these types of things? We should have multiple different types of defense strategies. Traditional signature based detection is very ineffective. So we need to add some more things onto our existing defense, such as behavior based detection. So you are monitoring the system behavior for anomalous activity that might indicate exploitation. Something like trend analysis, something like potential deviation, activities after business hours, sort of things. You then have threat hunting, where you are proactively searching for signs of compromise based on the threat intelligence available. We have something tools like EDR and WEF. They are the endpoint detection response and web application firewall that provides advanced protections against the unknown threats This is related to your end device, and this is related to your web server. So they can also help you to develop security against your 0 days. And we need to integrate. So for example, before that, let me give you an example. There was a case study that we have added here. So Stucknest worm, which was targeting the industrial control systems, and it was using a 0-day vulnerabilities in Exchange servers of Microsoft. So if you try to go deep inside these steps of analysis, it would make you develop effective defenses against variety of attacks. So, and we need to integrate with our SIEM, SOAR, and ITSM tool. SIEM is the security information management, SOAR is the automation solution, ITSM is a ticketing and a notification system inside the. Now, in the SIEM, we integrate the vulnerability scan. For example, let's say with Splunk for correlation vulnerabilities with other security events that can again provide a crucial context for analyst. So some more data we are capturing and adding as a part of the data point to analyze and correlate completely. We have a SOAR solution. This is used to automate the responses to detect vulnerabilities. Maybe we want to take actions like isolate affected system or blocking of a particular malicious traffic. Then we take it up with the help of SOAR. Certain type of actions manually not to be taken, directly we can take it up with the help of SOAR. And then we have something called as ITSM tool. So here we are feeding the vulnerability findings to ITSM. For example, let's say Jira or ServiceNow, so that it would automatically create tickets and it would help you to streamline the remediation workflow regarding how tracking is possible until the resolution is completely done. So these things we need to take care. Then there are some called as regulatory and industry standards mapping. And why it matters? So all the analysts must align vulnerability handling with frameworks to ensure compliance and to demonstrate due diligence. There are certain types of frameworks like NIST 853, ISO 20001, and CIS controls. If you map these particular things, it would ensure that the organization is addressing vulnerabilities in a structured and a compliant manner. How to prepare for audits with vulnerability data? So we need to maintain accurate vulnerability data and remediation plans to prepare and pass for the security audits. You should be having remediation plans, monthly reports, quarterly reports, weekly reports, and the evidences of implemented security controls in your organization. You may even have sector-specific guidelines. For example, FISMA for government, NERC for energy, sort of things. HIPAA for healthcare, that is a part of the sector one. So this would also help you to develop and have the vulnerability management checks in place. So this is the end of your theory section of the vulnerability management. We are going to deep dive into all of the tools as a part of the scanning and manager programs. Completely end to end we have added. So stay tuned and proceed to the practical section. Thank you.